platform where independent financial advisors could have their custody, their paperwork, their legal advisory all done by us to take all the pain points out of their lives. And we actually ended up successfully selling that business to a listed stockbroker in the UK called AJL. And so that was my first tech startup success, and that really, created the fun to do more in the startup world. Hence, I'm up to startup number 2 and startup number 3 now. But if I were to, why startups and why the journey to startups? I should tell you all that I'm old, right? I'm 50 years old. Okay, so my runway is not the same runway as people who are younger. My runway is not the same runway as people like Jakub and the guys that get fantastic opportunity to be in things like YC, that tend to be a much younger cohort of people. I have a shorter life than that. So I'm having what I describe as my Hamilton mode, right? This is my shot. I feel like I'm running out of time, and hence I really want to make sure that the next 1 or 2 startups that I do matter, and they're big. So that's really my journey. But Jakub, why don't you tell us a little bit about more about your journey to startups as well?
Yeah, sure, happy to. So my background path was also slightly non-traditional. I studied EP, which is goes into typical startup degree, but with this we thought there was a office in economics typically this associated with more like banking, consulting, government and careers, less so with startups. But for me, I think around sort of 2012, like 12 years ago, I guess, I've been kind of looking at what direction I'm going to take with my career. And I think one of the things that I would go deeply fascinated by how open and fast using the world of startups is, and I think that's what it's really drawn to me since I recall. Yeah, none of that, but we're doing this. Right. It's the boy good, like us in driving. Okay. So I think I remember one of these pivotal moments actually happened for us at this an event for an accelerator course called Entrepreneur First. So they started out by it as Clifford. We was then doing the recruiting like person to person. That's the UK AI ARIA organization. So he basically runs the AI for the UK government at this point. But his journey was kind of in a civil study, but he was kind of going around Oxford and Cambridge and a few other universities in the UK, trying to like get especially young students to create startups, because while startups were kind of the norm of MITs and for Harvard, I think the UK culture, at least back then, it was just 12 years ago now, so things have changed, was not that heavily startup focused. And I think a lot of other institutions have other kind of similar transition where, all their classes kind of traditionally going to management consulting. And now it's kind of tech is the much stronger part of the book people are team up and as they keep out there next year. So I remember that was like my first kind of contact with startups, because Matt's running the accelerator. I then later joined EF as a founder to the intention of running a startup. I think back then, we kind of didn't really know what we were doing. I picked up in the area of providing analytics for commodity trading houses. Didn't kind of so well. It turned out that's the difficult. But we had some interesting data sets and some lots of interest in learning. So we had even people interested in acquiring our tech, but then things get complicated for them to understand classes data sets. So that was kind of my first lesson. I think frequently with startups you to be okay with failure and not having succeeded on the first go. So that was my first journey into startups. And then over time I just felt that I loved it. So I then later co-founded Hypermile, which was then accepted into Y Combinator, which is, for those of you who may not know, is one of the leading kind of investors in early tech. They've invested. They were the first investors in like Airbnb, Reddit, Stripe, the Cruise and many others that are now sometimes over $100 billion at this point. So it's been a wonderful journey to be in there. I'm happy to talk about it more in depth later. But as a kind of short summary of how I got to startups, that would be it. So I think we kind of wanted to talk about maybe ultimately. Yeah.
And about more of these tools that I have. My question is to you, but you are, if you are a surgeon, you say, yes, you are not in the financial sector or anything like that. Yeah. And then the same. I was in the financial sector, but yeah, I started. You started medical as a surgeon. Yes. And then the financial sector. Yeah, okay. And and then the financial sector. Right. Yeah. But yeah. The first startup was not in the your as a level touching fashion, your experience or your passion. Am I right? Yes. And it fails. Yes. Yeah. Sorry. Can you did a startup in something totally different from your career? That's different from your passion, different from your background, and you succeed. Yes. So this is the question. The question is, everybody is saying that you start do something which is what you can do, or what is your strength in life, or having from your experience. But it is something a little different that you succeed that way. So how do you explain it?
Yeah. Okay. So, great question. Thank you. So first of all, I think it's the exception, not the rule. Okay. When you talk to people in the startup world, particularly people in tech startups and in Silicon Valley, and especially the types of accelerator that Jakub is in, and one of the accelerators that I'm a part of at the moment in Dubai, they typically look for people who have deep industry expertise, deep knowledge about a specific problem to solve. And this is certainly an advantage and a plus point. The more knowledge that you have about something, the more expertise that you have about something, the more insight that you have about a specific problem that you can solve, the better it is. Of course, that doesn't mean that you have to be the industry expert to have that insight, or to have that drive, or to have the ability to create a company or create a startup. So one element is, as I say, the expertise. But there are other fundamental qualities in a founder that people talk about. And those are the qualities of your critical thinking, your ability to have some sort of insight that somebody else has missed, your grit. Okay, you actually raise a brilliant question, because one of the things about startups, which if you're considering a startup you should all be aware of, is that nobody will believe you at the beginning, or very few people will believe you. Okay, so you have to get very good at hearing no, very good at accepting rejection, and very good at articulating why you think your idea is right. And part of the job of being an exceptional founder is being able to convince people, being able to capture hearts and minds, being able to capture people's imagination. So you're right, I have this odd background, and there are two ways that you can look at my background. You can either say that Rikin Patel guy, basically he's a serial failure. Okay, he started off as a surgeon, and then surgery didn't happen, so he became a banker, and then banking didn't happen, so he became a banker in the DIFC, and then that didn't happen, so he became a founder. Or you could say, actually, this is a guy that didn't stand still, that wasn't satisfied to fit into people's mold, that wanted to keep on doing more and doing more and doing more, and that's just part of my personality and part of my nature, is that, I can't sort of stop thinking, and I can't sort of stop trying to do the next thing. But to your question, if you have deep expertise in an industry area, of course that's a huge advantage, and that will help you to convince people. It's much harder to convince people about something if you have no background. However, if you show to people that you can start companies and you can solve problems, and you do that more than once, then eventually people will start to pay attention, and they will say, that crazy guy has got something about him. So, never stop. But yeah, thanks for the question.
So, other question,
and you give up your cake and you sell your second but remember, this is like crazy, the baby. Putting more effort, spending more time, writing, and then it's okay. And there you go. How do you make this decision? I mean, sometimes people are attached to the just, I would say, this is the reality for than the understand. But what we are right. So, how do you make this decision? Well, okay. How did begin? This Adam and
So this is another great question. I didn't want to sell the company. I didn't want to part with the company. I wanted to stay with the company. Okay. In that company, we started off as 3 co-founders. We ended up as 2 co-founders, and this is actually a life lesson about corporate structuring and how you structure a shareholder agreement. Because the way that the tag-along and the drag-along rights worked in that startup was that if we sold, everybody had to sell. We couldn't remain in as a minority investor in that company. So whilst I saw the upside in that company and I wanted to stay in, but the way that the deal was structured with AJ Bell, they wanted to buy it outright and they wanted control, and ultimately I didn't have the power to stay in. It's what in the Western world we call a high quality problem. To have an exit and to make profit and to make money is not the worst thing in the world, but it was a learning experience, and it's taught me about how I structure my next company and how I maintain control, hopefully all the way through the journey.
So it's like choosing a partner. It's like a marriage. You have to, if you are going to start a company with you should look for someone who is, and they say like you, what will have the same energy, or you have so many common things together. So on the way, towards getting years or 15 years, they're still working.
Yeah, the most important thing is to pick the right co-founder.
Yeah.
And when I say right and this is a super important point, and if you're ever lucky enough to be part of a YC, an Adler, a Global 500, any of these early stage accelerators, they will tell you that it's all about founder first and idea second. So, but when I say the right co-founder, you're absolutely right. It is like a marriage. You will spend more time with your co-founder than you will with your spouse because of the intensity of what a startup is. But you have to find somebody with whom you are aligned in your principles, aligned in your vision. You have to, when you're doing this from the beginning, it's really important that you set the ground rules for each other and that you work out how you resolve conflict and how you make decisions when you don't agree, because that of course will happen. And if you choose the wrong person, it's disastrous. It's founder first and idea second, and then obviously there's a second element to it, which is that you want to have the right balance of skills. So I'm a non-technical co-founder. I know nothing about. Jakub is incredible. I was talking to him yesterday, and he's like a coding genius. He can build tech to high quality quickly. Very much like my co-founder. I have no background in coding. I don't understand the first thing about technology. I had to ask somebody to help me to connect my laptop, right? But my co-founder is an incredibly technical person. He's a technologist from Silicon Valley who's managed a team of 450 engineers. So the first and foremost, we aligned in terms of our value, and we liked each other as people. Okay. The second thing is that we have complementary skill sets. He saw that I had an idea, and I had a vision, and I had a Rolodex, and I had commercial acumen, which he felt he was lacking. He would hate to come and speak like this. I'm very boisterous. I have no problem getting up in front of the crowd. So we have complementary skill sets, but we back each other all the way. And just on that point, I would say that if you're thinking about being a solo founder or being a co-founder, I would absolutely not recommend you to be a solo founder unless you think you're Elon Musk. Founding a business is very, very, very hard. To have somebody that you can rely on to pick you up, because there's going to be many more lows than there will be highs, is super, super important.
Fair question about the yeah, you really were bad.
Yeah, I just wanted to maybe add a few things from my own lesson. So I think two things I wanted to touch on. First, in the area of expertise, I think it's, especially when you're thinking about a tech company, and I think that's probably the context in which we're thinking here. The expertise matters a great deal, but there's a lot of fields, especially right now, where the playbook is being written as we speak, right? So I've worked in AI for over a decade, and yet the revolution with large language models, LLMs, like ChatGPT, I think shocked so many academics, even people who have been paying attention, right? And so I think when you think about these fields, there are fields where there almost effectively no deep experts exist. You couldn't have spent more than 3-4 years on LLMs anyway, no matter where you worked. And if you worked anywhere outside of Silicon Valley, basically everyone got ChatGPT at the same time, the whole world, which is in a sense an incredible opportunity, right? Because you can now become an expert very quickly because the landscape changes daily, and that's not an exaggeration. I worked in AI for so long, so all of the basics I have down, but what's the state of the art, what's like the kind of current best knowledge about a particular area changes literally day to day. And so I think that is almost an advantage to the startup founder. If you put in the time, put in the hours, you can get to an incredible level of expertise very quickly. And so I would encourage you to think about that. And I think in that sense, when we see people going from field to field, again, there's some ways in which you can acquire expertise incredibly quickly. And I think that's actually an incredible advantage. In addition to the fact that obviously you get better as a builder of companies, teams, and all the mechanics of running a startup. So it's just on the first question that we discussed on we could touch on. On the question of co-founders, again, I could not agree more on how important that is. It's more important than a marriage. And I would encourage you, and I in fact did this with Hypermile. I was effectively dating a few co-founders for, if it wasn't, I had a list of people that I could potentially co-found with, but also I reached out to as many of my networks as I could to get as big of a kind of input. You gotta almost treat it as sales, right? You gotta have your input funnel. You will start off with casting as broad of a net as possible. You don't want to miss out on someone great just because you didn't message them. That would be silly. So try to message all the people that you think have what it takes, and then have your first date. Try to see where it goes. Try to see if you can make use of the principles. I think those are incredibly important. And there's a bit of a tactical kind of advice. There's I think First Round Capital, one of the leading VCs in Silicon Valley, has this article, I believe it's called 50 Questions to Ask Your Co-Founder. And it captures everything about your exit preferences, how you want to run teams, how you want to hire, all those different areas of disagreement. And actually it's been an incredibly useful tool for me to go, and I did it with at least, I think, about 7 people before I found my eventual co-founder for Hypermile. So I basically went through these questions and we talked about each one of them, like hiring, how do you want to do it? Exit, what's a good exit? At what point would you sell? At what point would you hold? Those are the types of questions that can cause a lot of friction later on, right? Because there's nothing worse to a startup than a disagreement and a founding team. First of all, you should probably agree about 90% of the stuff and have a really good process for figuring out the remaining 10%. Because especially if you're close to equal partners and there's conflict, the whole company sees that, right? I grew Hypermile to be about 15 full-time employees. Now I manage, now running a company of 60. So it's a very different environment, but people really see and feel the disagreement. So there's nothing more important than the co-founding relationship, and you really should treat it almost like dating. You should meet a lot of people. You should have a very strict process, and try to early on. You should try to look for reasons why it won't work.